Hello and welcome, independent researchers, skeptics, and all of humankind, to Shadow Citizen.
Welcome to episode 7. This week's guest is Catherine Austin Fitz. You can listen live on mixlr.com/Shadow Citizen, and you can also chat along over there. We are simulcast at radioconfluence.com, and from there you can take us with you on TuneIn and Zeno Live. So my name is Rob O'Sell, and my co-host is
Rachel L. McIntosh. And oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to have an aneurysm or if I need to keep a bag next to me. My heart is racing. One of my biggest heroes is with us today. Her name is Catherine Austin Fitz. And I'm so happy and proud that she has joined us. Catherine, thank you for joining us.
Oh, I'm thrilled to join you. I'm so excited you're doing a show, Rachel. I think it's fabulous.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. Now, the reason why I wanted to have you on this show is because so much of what's going on in the world around us, and specifically in America, over these past few decades, well, let's say the past 50 years, things have kind of slowed down for people. They're slowly disintegrating for people, but they don't know why. And now we're at kind of a critical mass. Things are really falling apart to the point where we don't even know what's real news. Things that we took for granted are kind of falling apart. Money. It doesn't seem to be buying what it used to buy. And so I'm really excited to have you with us. And first off, I want to have you, in your own words, explain what you are. What happened to you, how your life brought you to talking on the show with me. How did that happen?
So I was a partner at a Wall Street firm. As a very young child, I had seen mortgage fraud and narcotics trafficking destroying my neighborhood in Philadelphia. I lived in West Philadelphia outside of the University of Pennsylvania, where my father was a professor of surgery. And so I saw the narcotics trafficking, mortgage fraud destroy my neighborhood. And I decided I was going to, when you talk to the people who were dealing drugs, they said, we're doing this to make money. So I thought, what is this money thing? And why are people destroying the equity in a place? I didn't use those words then as a child, but we're clearly destroying all the equity in this neighborhood. We're liquidating the people, everything to make money. How can that make money? So I said, I'm going to figure out this money thing and figure out why we can't make more money turning it around. So I went to Wall Street, became a partner of Dillon and Company, and then it was pretty clear that all the money was being engineered from Washington, whether it's by the Treasury or the central bank. So I thought, okay, well, I've got to go to Washington and figure out the other, map out the other things of how the money works so I can figure out how to turn things around. And I worked for 18 months as Assistant Secretary of Housing in the first Bush administration. And I came to the conclusion that you couldn't turn it around in government because government I basically left the Bush administration, said the fascists are going to take digital technology and use it to basically kill us all. So I started a company that was an investment bank and broker-dealer, and it was also a financial software developer because I discovered the internet. And I said, what we're going to do for people to enforce the Constitution, they need financial disclosure for how all the government money works in their real neighborhood. You and I walk around and live in a place. So I'll give you an example. When I was the FHA commissioner, we used to have all these lists of where our foreclosures were. And you could literally take a list of foreclosures and go to that place and there was nothing there.
Oh, brother.
But
that was fake. They were giving you fake data to make real decisions about.
Yeah, fake data. So I said, look, let's just open source this. Let's just let every community have the data on taxpayer resources that's not subject to a privacy condition in their neighborhood and let them police, and make sure we're optimizing the money. So let me give you an example. There are 3,100 counties in America, and what you will find is invariably we are paying a big defense contractor $50 to $100 an hour. That's something that can be teleported into that community and paid for 25 plus healthcare. So we're spending $250,000 a unit to build public housing, when 50,000 will buy, and 25,000 will rehab a single family foreclosed home in that neighborhood. So if you optimize the money within a county area, there's tremendous savings to be gained that would create lots of employment and be great for small business if you were to do it. Anyway, so I left the administration and said, look, I don't trust government to fix anything. Let's create community data banks and organize the small business into venture pools that can significantly lower the cost of equity capital for small business. And let's re-engineer everything in a way that saves money for the taxpayers. So the way I said it is the taxpayers have a negative return on investment, and small business can make money and create employment, turning it positive.
So you're the original Think Local. You're like the OG. You're Think Local.
No, not Think Local. Profit Local.
Good.
I'm into for-profit. I'm into for-profit solutions. One of the biggest political problems we have in this country is the psychopaths are fabulous at getting together and organizing for-profit conspiracies. But all the good guys are like, no, it's bad to make money and we have to work all weekend really hard to save the country. Well, it's not economic. In other words, something has to be economically sustainable to work. So I always say we have to make money doing it because then we can do it. It's economically sustainable anyway. So I'm into.
I'd like to butt in here if I could. It's from the Eisenhower quote about the rise of the military-industrial complex, and somehow they've managed to put military contractors into every community. It seems like in every county anyway, and all of these.
Rob, the first way they did that was they had them take over the government agencies. So when I was Assistant Secretary of Housing, the FHA Single Family Fund was required by law to be run on a self-supporting basis, but I could not get the data on how the accounting, whether we were doing that or not. And I would regularly go to the big defense contractor that ran the information and payment systems and demand the data, and they would refuse to give it to me. I mean, I used to have these wars over getting the data, and I finally had to go to the White House and have the whole accounting department move to me. It was reporting the Assistant Secretary of Administration. I had it report to me so I could literally get the data to see if I was complying with the law or not.
Well, for someone who's, kind of just, I always excelled in shop but anyway, for working on the floor, it seemed like, they had all of the people that were working mandatory overtime, putting in all those hours. So everybody is just, completely strung out. They're not being very efficient. The jobs could be done a lot more efficiently, but I kind of came to the conclusion that they, that all the man hours that they're, racking up are just, cost plus because they're military contracts. Right. They're just going out cost plus. So they aren't really concerned with, efficiency and productivity on the floor. And the scorpions in there, they get the they're working.
So the whole cost plus model really does, it works for some things, but it's been, we've created an edifice that has grown in a way where people's time and money is not being optimized. You literally have an infrastructure that's trying to generate the most profits by generating the most costs, is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, speaking of that, last night, President Trump, he gave a speech to Congress. It was a fantastic speech, I thought. The way it was written, it was really good. But as I sat at the end, I was like, how are we going to fund all this stuff? Building walls, sending people like the contracts for the F-35. That's like the most expensive project in the history of the world. Right. Seriously. How are we going to do any of this?
So there are two questions. First of all, when a society spends money for something, the question is not how much money do we spend. The question is, does it have a positive return or not? If I spend $1 billion on something that has a wildly positive return, then I spend $1 billion and I create 10 billion.
Right.
And then I can afford to pay it back because I've created so much wealth with it. So the issue is not, Right now, everything has a negative return. We spend $1 billion, and not only does it not create 10 billion, it destroys $1 billion. And so we've started to think in terms of everything's about spending. It's not about spending. It's about whether it has a positive return or not. So, for example, Peter Drucker, the great management expert, once said that the GI Bill had a wildly positive return to taxpayers, because what we did was, the generation came back from the war. They all went to college, got really smart, and they led the building of American industry. So, and I think he was right, because education well done has a fantastically positive return. So the issue on what number one issue is, will it have a positive return or not? That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, the second big problem in the budget is we are financing two civilizations out of one budget, and we're pretending that it's not happening. We're pretending that one of those civilizations is entirely secret, doesn't exist, but it does. And the
tell people about this, because I don't know if people realize what's going on. There's two, like you said, there's two tracks going on right now, parallel.
So the budget has two sources of revenue and two uses of expenses. Okay. The first source is the taxes that we pay on April 15th. So everybody now, it's March, and everybody's now preparing to pay their taxes that come in on April 15th. Okay. So that's one pot of money. The second pot of money is called organized crime, narcotics trafficking, mortgage fraud, government securities fraud. That's a second tax on the population. And that's why magically we can never seem to stop organized crime in this country, because it's financing sort of critical purpose things. So we have that second tax. And if you look at what's happening to the population, that second tax is destroying the economy. And
now, I live in Rhode Island, which is happens to be like one of the capitals of mafia stuff in the world, in the United States. We did have a very successful breakdown of the mafia with a couple decades ago, but it's still going on. And like you said, you didn't have
a breakdown of the mafia. The intelligence agencies took over the business and are running it through corporations.
Oh my God.
So,
okay.
I mean,
that
here's
would make
the thing.
sense.
If I'm a soccer mom and I'm trying to this is a very centralized model. And the reason a group of soccer moms cannot get together and back narcotics out of their neighborhood is, the narcotics are being run by Tony Soprano, and Tony Soprano works for James Bond. And James Bond is financing Area 51 or, whatever. And literally, if the soccer moms cut off the cash flow, the next thing you know, you have black helicopters coming down on their heads.
Mm-hmm.
Because if one neighborhood can get out of the model, then every neighborhood can get. So they can't afford to let one model. And you'll see these funny situations around the country. So if you look at, for example, Linda Ives, who was a mom in Arkansas whose son was killed by the black budget guys, he just happened to run into it's called, there's a very famous book about it called Boys on the Track. And the next thing you know, this mom is trying to find out what happened to her son, and she's literally got black helicopters coming down on her head. She's like, I'm a little nobody, mom from Arkansas. Why black helicopters coming down on my head? And that's because one neighborhood, if you let one neighborhood out, then they can all get out. It's highly centralized, and the money's very leveraged, and they need the money.
The other thing that I noticed was I actually watched the whole Oliver North, testimony when it was going on live. Uh-huh. I had a TV on in the room that I was working. I was replacing flooring in that. But I kept telling myself, he's got immunity. Anything he testifies to, he cannot be prosecuted for. But he doesn't have immunity if he perjures himself. So basically, anything he's telling the Congress is the truth. But then that whole thing, I don't know if you saw the Gary Webb Kill the Messenger documentary that was just out maybe 2 years ago now. But, all of a sudden then the Monica Lewinsky thing comes up. And so everybody wanted and the news media ran with the, with the drug, with the president having sex.
Right. Well, Monica Lewinsky was basically an effort to shut down the Ron Brown assassination and the China, the whole stuff around Brown and raising money from China, and then the explosion of the Gary Webb and Dark Alliance. So between Ron Brown and Gary Webb, you had those stories exploding in the middle of 1996, and you needed to put a lid on them. And that's when we got attacked, because we were publishing money maps, and we published a money map of South Central LA and the HUD foreclosures, because they were using the HUD FHA portfolio to launder the money. So they were leveraging the money with mortgage fraud. Because if you take $1 of cocaine profits, you can lever it enormously with, so I can take $1 of cocaine profits and turn it into $100 using mortgage fraud related to that. And so you'll see these neighborhoods. I found a neighborhood in Chicago once where the same home had been financed and defaulted 5 times in 1 year.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So
now is this is a totally different thing. I don't know for sure. For instance, countrywide home loans, that's a different thing. That is just total. What was that all about? Countrywide.
Well, it wasn't
they weren't doing the black budget stuff. They were just being greedy.
No,
were they?
They were doing the black budget stuff too. So let me go back to our framework. So you have two taxes. Let's go back to the federal budget. You have 2 taxes. One is the overt tax, the other is the covert tax. And then on the other side of the fence, you have 2 uses of money. One is the overt budget, and the other is the covert budget. Okay. Now that covert budget is also levered with what I call the hidden system of finance. I'm about to do a Solari report on the Exchange Stabilization Fund. And you have a fund that is in Treasury. It's managed by the New York Fed and member banks. And it's what I call the mother of all slush funds. And it can combine with sort of another source of this illicit money, which is broad intervention in the markets and manipulation of both currency. It can legally intervene in currency, commodities, and securities markets. So you have all sorts of shenanigans going on in the financial markets as well. So you have an overt tax, a covert tax, overt spending, and a covert spending. And here's the problem: the covert tax and covert spending has done so much harm to the general economy that it's time to, the overt economy is saying, look, we can't keep destroying the overt economy. We have to rebuild. We can't afford this much corruption. We can't afford this much crime. And the problem you have in getting in there and re-engineering the budget is you can't be honest about why you're doing what you're doing, and the fact that you need this enormous invisible cash flow on a non-accountable basis. And part of the problem is, if you look at, let's just pretend that there's some legitimate reasons to spend that money. So let's say you have a secret space program and you need to keep paying to, maintain your spaceships. So, but you've also created this enormous edifice of politicians and defense contractors and banks who, frankly, the overhead has gone completely out of control. And this secrecy has created a system of privilege, and all those people are basically overpaid and no longer needed. And so the politics of how you take this enormous overhead that you've built up and streamline it is another thing that's going on. So you have a couple of, I call it the clash of civilization. It's the real clash of civilization between the black budget folks and the overt folks. But then you have this whole edifice of very expensive politicians and overhead and fake news people. And you can't afford them anymore. You don't need them anymore. And so they're screaming bloody murder because they don't want to lose their sinecure.
Right. How do normal people fit into this? Because I'm questioning whether normal people fit into the political process at all at this point in my life. If we can't even get involved with that at a very simple level, now we're talking about a black budget type of thing. How can we even, as humans alive, get our heads around this and work to make our communities better?
Okay, so let's talk about the the big problem and the little problem. So,
okay,
so big picture,
which one do you want to do first?
Let's do big picture,
All right.
then let's
All
do
right.
little picture.
Okay.
So the big picture, here's our problem. We got a group of I'll call them the grumpy old men.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got George Shultz, you've got Henry Kissinger, you've got all these people who've maintained all these secrets for their entire life, and they don't want us to know the truth. And so what's their plan? Well, their plan is to double down on Orwell. So everybody should be chipped and they should have their money, digital. And if they don't behave, we turn off their money. So, so they're into mind control slavery to just deal with the situation, because they find the management of these multiple personality disorder universes very difficult to deal with. And they're afraid they can't keep a lid on it anymore. So they want to double down on totalitarianism. And we think that is just, the problem with totalitarianism is it destroys wealth. It's just the greatest wealth destroyer in the world. And that's where all the inequality is coming from. It's coming from this situation. It's coming from the black budget. It's not coming from new technology. All that stuff is yeah. It's coming from the fact that we have a group of people who can print money for free and have the ability to kill with impunity, and have been behaving on a lawless basis for 50 years. That's the source of inequality. So the grumpy old men are saying, okay, we're going to double down on Orwell and go to something very inhuman. And the rest of us are saying, no, we're not going to do that. And I think the hard part for most people is they can't fathom how this other complete world, we have been financing a whole new civilization that really exists, and they just can't fathom that it's gotten as bad as it has, or that those guys would do something that inhuman. And I think it's very, very important that first and foremost, on the big picture, that we understand that they are basically as crazy as they are. I mean, we are dealing with a plan which is inhuman and psychopathic, and it's got to be stopped. And that's one of the reasons, one of the great strengths of Trump is that's what he's saying. He's saying, no, we need a human plan.
Well,
Rob, you had asked about this earlier today. You and I were talking. This plan, there seems to be this real plan.
Well, there seems to be a larger agenda, and what is going on with you mentioned the grumpy old men. Well, these guys aren't going to be around forever. So, is there a replacement posse standing in the wings? It's certainly not Jeb Bush. He doesn't have the mental fortitude. Do you want to speculate? Possibly who?
Well, George and Jeb Bush represent the Bush family interests. Yeah, they are. They are part of the replacements.
But they certainly don't have the tactical skills that Poppy had. And, who do they have to replace? Is it Zbigniew Brzezinski and Kissinger? Hillary can't replace Kissinger.
Let's look at Economist magazine, shall we? Who's on the up-and-coming list? Yeah.
Yeah, Hillary was on the up-and-coming list.
Yeah.
Remember? It was Hillary and Jeb. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so let's go to the little picture. The little picture is that we are now in a situation, so I'm just going to talk about the United States for now. We are now in a situation where we either enforce the Constitution or lose it. And if we lose the Constitution, we are going to a world where the leadership will basically implement a totalitarian system very, very dependent on mind control and very, very dependent on entrainment technology and and digital technology to control people. If we protect the civilization, if we protect the Constitution and enforce it, then what's going to happen is we bring transparency to what's really been going on. Because there's only one way you can destroy the credibility of the fake news and the people who've been running things, and that's to basically face reality. Now, let me tell you a story. Rachel, have you ever heard my red button story?
Yes, but share it with everybody. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, Rob, have you heard it?
Yes, I have. And I was actually going to ask you to repeat it because I think this is like systemic through the whole thing. Even to the, factory floor level, people are saying, well, yeah, we could be more efficient, but we got this cushy lifestyle. So why speak up? Okay.
So we've been in a economic model. I call it the central banking warfare model, where the leadership runs around the world and extracts natural resources for cheap and kills a lot of people and uses warfare, but basically subsidizes everybody in America. So if you look at America talking about having a wonderful life and being free and all this stuff, all of those good things have been financed by genocide of other people. And we're all complicit in that. We're all the financial beneficiary of that. So, it's real funny. I hear people talk about how wrong it is to have these things done to them, but nobody's offering to return capital back to the Indians who we stole the land from or anybody else. So, anyway, so I was giving a speech in the summer of 2000 to a wonderful group of people called Spiritual Frontiers Foundation International. And they have a conference once a year to talk about how they can help our society evolve spiritually. They're very committed to spiritual evolution, very well educated, very intelligent. And so I've been asked to give a speech called How the Money Works in Organized Crime, which later became a very popular article called Narco Dollars for Beginners. So I'm in the middle of the speech and I'm explaining about how the U.S. Congress had done congressional testimony in 1998 about the so-called Dark Alliance Gary Webb allegations. And the fact that a reporter from Insight magazine had been interviewing somebody from the Department of Justice who during that testimony said the U.S. economy laundered $500 billion to $1 trillion a year of all dirty money. So that's narcotics trafficking, that's illegal gambling. Now the financial fraud is much bigger than that now, so it's grown. But so I said to this wonderful group of spiritually evolved people, about 100 people, what would happen if we stopped being the global leader in money laundering? And so they had a little conversation and they said, well, we'd have a problem because our taxes might go up because we have problems financing the government deficit because we defend the people who control $500 billion to $1 trillion and the accumulated capital they're on after many, many years. And so our taxes might go up or our government checks might stop or, that money would go to Hong Kong and Singapore and London. And so our stocks might go down. And I said, okay, well, let's pretend there's a big red button here up on the lectern. If you push that button, you can stop all hard narcotics trafficking in your town, your county, your state, your country tomorrow. Who here will push the button? And out of 100 people dedicated to evolving our society spiritually, only one would push the button. So I said to the other 99, why would you not push the button? They said, well, we don't want our stocks to go down. We don't want our government checks to stop. And we don't want our taxes to go up. So here's the problem.
That's the problem.
You walk into the Oval Office tomorrow, you're the president. So Donald Trump walked into the Oval Office, he's the president. 99%, that number is probably, lower now, but 99% do not want him to push the red button.
Mm-hmm.
So how can he push the red button? And that's part of the fight you're seeing in Washington. Because he's trying to push the red button. He's trying to do it in a way that will make money pushing the red button. And everybody's scared to death because they know a lot of their constituents don't want the button pushed. And that's why the conversation we need to have is not how do we push the red button, but how do we turn the button green? How do we make money pushing the red button? Because then we can push it.
We're supposed to do the tie color report now. That was one of the things, but I'm going to executive order.
I do this tie color report, where I evaluate the different ties that people have been wearing on the news for the past week. And I noticed. Oh,
well, we have to discuss the ties at the speech last night.
Oh well, yeah, that's just obvious. But but no, do you want to just start the music and we'll do? But I want to talk to Catherine Rustin Fitz.
Yeah,
I'd rather talk to her.
I do too.
I can do the tie color report next week again. But everybody saw the blue ties, and everybody knows what blue represents. It's a calming thing. It's of course been associated with the Democrats, and of course it's been associated with Israel, and it's also associated with intellect. And it's a calming thing. It literally puts your biology like it wants to sleep when you see it.
Really?
So it calms you down, yeah. Whereas red, as you know, the power tie, gets the hairs on the back of your neck going, and it's instantly gives you a little bit of like, oh, there's danger, and it's not even a point of danger, but it makes you alert. Like that's why people
Well,
wear
but the
ties.
president was wearing a blue stripe, dark blue
Yes,
stripe.
it was dark blue stripes.
And the vice president and Ryan were wearing these bright blue.
Mm-hmm. And
So
the stripes, the white stripes going down, that was the big thing that he started when he went to talk to the FBI and the CIA. He did that meeting. That's when everybody got on the stripes, horizontal stripes, which happened to be going the opposite way than they used to be in the 70s for whatever reason. But they have them going down. And that's about communication. It also represents like when the TV, old TVs used to do this kind of static thing. They'd go kind of staticky diagonal. That is so that your eye keeps going back down and up, back down and up, back down and up while he's talking. So that's another thing that sort of lulls you. And the reason why I ended up talking about this, Catherine, is because when I worked for that defense contractor, I used to help people pick out their ties before they went on TV. And I found out there's a whole psychology behind what color you're going to put on somebody. It was during the travel ban, this travel ban / Muslim ban, that when that came out, CNN instantly had all their pundits, not the people reading the news, but the pundits were all in brown. And they were in brown type of ties. And I'd never dealt with brown before. So I looked it up, and brown was the first choice of people that had lived through the World War II, people, Holocaust survivors and stuff, brown. And it was, they were attracted to it because it meant being amongst the people that were like them. And I thought it was very interesting that they chose to put their pundits in brown. That meant being with people like them. That was the quote unquote thing. Yeah. So that was something. So I keep my eyes open on this stuff. And usually I do a tie color report, but we won't do it this week because we're with you. And it's much more important to talk about what you're talking about. So, okay. So now back to what you were talking about. We want to solve this. And still this whole thing seems so huge. And you said you want to turn this thing green, the red button green. How would a normal person, like myself, my 2 kids, trying to keep my budget, trying to pay my bills, how do I turn that red button green?
So here's the permaculturalists have a wonderful concept called stacking functions. And so you need to think in terms of stacking functions. So think of it this way. If, one of my nicknames for the system, the illicit tax and spending is the tapeworm. So the way the tapeworm finances itself is by draining you. And so the way you can basically shift the power between the tapeworm and the host is by not letting it drain you. Okay. And so we want to find a pathway which is net energy plus to you. Okay. So the first thing to look at is your time. Okay. I want to look at time, intelligence, and budget. The first thing we need to do is look at your time and look at the sources and uses of your time for a week, a month, and a year. Where is your time being wasted? Where is your time being drained? And that's what we want to do. We want to start saving you time. I always tell people, so I'm very big on no TV because TV comes with all sorts of entrainment and subliminal programming and disinformation. And so my attitude is, if you're watching 10 hours a week, can you just cut it down to 5 and save 5 hours? And can we use that time to then do something that will give you more energy? So for example, intelligence, it's extremely important that we all learn how to be our own doctors. If you look at people who are knowledgeable about navigating both natural and traditional healthcare, and they're smart, they have the intelligence, they have the training, they've watched the documentaries, they've learned, and so they've invested time in being really, really smart about how to make sure they're healthy and how to use the different healthcare systems. But that takes an investment of time. And so shift, 5 hours a week out of TV and into learning how to be your own doctor.
Good.
Because it'll save you so much money, and it will save you, if you want to be financially successful, you have to be a master at knowing how to economically navigate both holistic and sort of corporate health.
Yes.
So,
yes.
okay.
I want to bring this up too, because here in Rhode Island, we have Brown University, Brown Medical. My kid's doctor, he's a homeopath and an MD. He actually went to Brown University, and he started up, he goes once a week to meet with the students at Brown to teach them about the different types of, vitamins and, stuff that's like kind of alternative, but it's really what you can do to avoid all of the allopathic medicine that they're teaching them at Brown. So I'm glad to hear you say that, because it is going to be a return on the investment when you're finally done with it. We'll have a civilization of really healthy people, hopefully, if people wake up to this. Yeah.
Right. And the biggest, I'm an investment advisor, and the biggest financial problems I see are people who did not, they wholesale trusted the system, and they were not discerning users of the system. And as a result, they lose. It's interesting. There was one mother unvaxxed who said, if you have, if your child if you do heavy schedules of vaccines, your child becomes a heavily autistic, that's going to cost you $5 million present value.
At least.
Right. So
I'm going to jump in here just quick, because it's self-related. I mean, I've been driving cab for the last 3 weeks as a way to just generate some income, and I won't get into the rest of it. But one of the big things that I do is haul people for the county. They're on Medicare or Medicaid or Social Security, disability or something. But I'm actually hauling. I have one regular customer. I pick him up 3 times a week. He's a double amputee. I believe it's probably from diabetes. He doesn't pee anymore. He goes to dialysis 3 times a week, and that takes care of that for him. But what I've noticed in the time that I've been in this, I've been in the same place for 40 years, and the healthcare industry is just this, it's like the most bustling thing in the whole community. There's more going on there, and the parking lot's always full, and it's, it's just crazy, but it fits right into take care of yourself and avoid all those expenses, because this guy is just now a drain on the rest of us. Right. So what you saw starting about 10 or 15 years ago is in every county, particularly the rural counties, you were building a new criminal justice system, a big criminal justice center with courthouses and jails, and then a big hospital edifice. And one was basically liquidating the population with pharmaceuticals, and the other was liquidating the population with narcotics. And it was absolutely engineered in a plan, in my opinion. So those are 2 cycles you want to avoid. And the way to avoid it is so for example, I just had a dear friend who was diabetic, and it was worsening. And I got him the DVD that Simply Raw did on how to heal, naturally. And he found a clinic in his local area. He couldn't afford to go to the place in Arizona. And they walked him through the thing, and now he's completely insulin and drug-free.
My gosh.
And it's all managed through diet. Yeah, it's all managed through diet. It can be done. Not everybody, but a lot of people can do it. And the knowledge is there. So, but it requires a significant investment of time. And that's why you've got to start with your time budget, because what you're looking to do every week is save some time and keep investing that time in things that give you energy. So let me give you another example. A lot of people still bank with the big banks who are basically draining and stealing our money and running the government money illegally. You really want to bank with a bank of people you know and trust, and you want to bank at a bank where the people can make decisions. And what you will find is if you can find a really great local bank or credit union and move into them and get to know them and have a relationship, you will have a much safer, nicer life. So I had my business attacked by a group of people trying to frame me, including the Department of Justice. And I had a bank that was dirty. And now I have a bank that's clean. And it makes a huge difference to have a clean bank. So take that time, for example, and find yourself a great local bank or credit union and sort of get that. Now, if you come to Solari, I've got an article called Coming Clean, and lots of articles, like if you want to find a great local bank, there's one on how to find a local bank. So there's lots of information, but you want to keep this dynamic going. And what you want to do in terms of your all the people you work with and do business, you want to back the tapeworm out of your life because it's draining you. And you want to back it out of your pocketbook. You want to back it out of your head. So, shut off all the fake news. Just shut them off. And so go through every aspect of your life and back the tapeworm out so that it can't drain you. You're trying to build your immune system to being drained. You're trying to get rid of the parasite.
Good analogy. Good analogy.
Right. And so that's how you can, the way you can cut their cash flows off is don't let them steal from you.
There is this thing going on, with the big red button crew. You definitely have the scorpions that you mentioned on your report, and you have the piggies and the scaredy cats.
Right.
And the piggies just love to have the scorpions in control, and the scorpions go right after those Titanic turners. And I don't know, maybe we should ask you to go into those four things.
So what I discovered when the new administration came in, I started to listen to all the different descriptions of what was happening, and there was tremendous misunderstanding. And because a lot of this ultimately comes down to the budget. So I said, okay, let me create some profiles to make life simple. And I said, okay, we have four profiles or four types of people in Washington. We have Titanic turners. So those are the people who say, look, we really have to change. We're going to jump on the Titanic and try and turn it before it hits the iceberg. Then you have scaredy cats, people saying, oh, this is really, things are getting really dicey. I'm going to, go buy an island and take all my money and put it, in an offshore haven, and I'm going to hide. So you got the scaredy cats. Then you've got the piggies. The piggies have been making money by, Rachel saw a lot of piggies, I'm sure, when she worked for L3, but they're just trying to make money from the system. They don't care about the whole, they're busy making money trading deck chairs on the Titanic, and they're not noticing that it's going to hit an iceberg. And then you have the scorpions, and everybody knows the story of the scorpion and the frogs. The scorpions just love to kill. They just love killing you and taking your stuff. They're just dirty players. And unfortunately, we have a system where the piggy and scorpions have been highly successful, and they've been rising. And it's in every different institution or walk in life. You just get more and more. And of course, the problem is that they're killing the goose that laid the golden egg. And that's, what I see in the current administration is you have a whole lot of people whose impulse is to be Titanic turners. And the question is, can they figure out a way to get the piggies to come over? And, because if you say to a piggy, look, this is the way it's going to go, you can make money. As Trump said to Boeing, we want you to make money, but not that much money. He's saying, you can make money here. I'll play. If you're a reasonable piggy, we'll play with you, but you can't be an out of control piggy.
You can't be a swine.
You can't, right? You can't be a swine. So he's making room for the piggies. He's saying, we want happy piggies to come and help us. We Titanic turners, there's room on the Titanic for the piggies as long as you're productive. If you can have a positive return on investment, you can make money, and but you got to be a piggy that has a positive return, not a negative return. So he's putting that boundary on piggies, but he's saying piggies welcome as long as they have positive returns for the taxpayers. His problem is trying to figure out how he's going to deal with the scorpions, because remember, the scorpions, he has no information or financial sovereignty. He's dependent on telecommunication systems controlled by the scorpions, and that's what he's struggling with now. Mm-hmm. How does he get information sovereignty?
I think Jim Cramer used to always say that pigs make money, hogs get slaughtered. But right. What I'm noticing, and I mentioned this to Rachel beforehand, it's almost like in real life, it's just playing any of these survival island series. The people on the island, they kind of team up and they go right after the Titanic turners because, they know if the Titanic turners are the ones that would end up winning the competition. And once again, it goes back to pushing that big red button. They like their lifestyle. I've talked about Mia Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And, as long as it's a nice cage and you're making more than you would on the outside, it's a good place to be. So, but yeah, I'd like to get, how is Trump going to address, how is he going to deal with the situation? David Stockman was on with Greg Hunter and had a pretty good insight into if they don't raise the budget ceiling, then all of a sudden the president has the right to allocate finances of the money that is coming in.
Right.
So that's true?
I believe so. I think, unless laws have changed, but I believe it is true. Stockman would know a lot more about the procedural issues than I would. So if he says it, I'm assuming it's true unless something's changed and he doesn't know about it. But in that situation, the president has massive power to cut and slash and burn and do things. So I think from watching what's going on, I don't think that Trump yet has the full picture. But I think the question that's going to really decide this is, if Trump is the president, it's because there was a faction of the deep state who backed him.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So the question is, who are they, and are they going? How are they going to play? Because what you're watching is not Trump versus the deep state. What you're watching is a struggle within the deep state between, are we going to rape the place one last time, or are we going to rebuild? And there is a real struggle between the rape and the rebuild. And right now, there's a great deal that the American people could do to swing it towards rebuild. But there's a lot of naivete around that. So,
well, F. William Engdahl has kind of gone along with what you're saying, in that Trump is the right man for the job at this time, because one way or another, the deep state seems to want to get us into war. And the way the United States is right now, we would not win a war, and so in order to be ready for that war, he has to rebuild the infrastructure. And so,
well, I wouldn't say that we wouldn't win it. It depends on what the space weaponry, the truth of the space weaponry is. To win, we might have to do something that would disclose what we really have. I think the problem is, if you look at the military capacity on the ground, in the traditional functions, we are losing capacity vis-a-vis the Chinese and the Russians. And so it's on the more conventional side where we really need to be regarded if we're going to maintain our position. I do think that there is this tremendous tension on the ground between if you look at the illegal tax, the extent of the illegal tax is it's destroying the basic habits and values you need as a culture to be productive. So if we're going to have a productive society, people's time needs to be used productively. They need to be physically healthy. You're talking about cultural behaviors. And what has happened for the last 50 years is we have promoted a culture which is deeply unproductive. Mm-hmm. And we can't survive. So, for example, I have a friend who's in the grocery business, and he showed me in the middle of last year, the prior 12 months of grocery sales, it was $2 billion for fresh fruits and vegetables and $10 billion for carbonated drinks. Now, what I can tell you is, any society that consumes that much sugar is dead. It has no chance. It's just reality. The
guy mentioned that they take back and forth to dialysis. They tell him he can have so many sodas in between, and I didn't even ask if he's drinking aspartame or real sugar. So it just either one's a killer. So
right. So if you look at how we as a society are behaving, we have no chance of succeeding. And so we have to change, whether it's, the fake news people have to stop wasting that much time on fake news, or, we stop drinking $10 billion a year of carbonated sodas. So, we are a society that is headed for the trash can, and we have to change. And the question is, when and how do we do that? And it's funny. I had one of the top butchers in the world is on. We're doing something called the Food Series on the Solari Report. And he said, it's very interesting. He said, Europeans on average pay twice as much for food as Americans, but then they pay half as much for healthcare.
Mm.
And it's exactly what you're talking about, your friend with dialysis.
Yeah, he's just one of my clients, or somebody that I drive.
Right.
He's
Person in
we
the cab.
talk every
Yeah.
day. Yeah,
Right.
so but
Right. So the guy in the cab he or society is paying double for his health care because they shortchanged him on his food.
yeah, this industrial grows GMO, and nobody knows about all that stuff. So how do you how do the people
Well,
that
but
are
That's why we're doing what we're doing.
I'm going to disagree with you there. So let me just give you the big secret on communications. If I wrote an email to the two of you,
Right.
and it had 2 paragraphs, and I said in the first paragraph, here's how every man can have as many erections as he wanted. And
Okay,
in the
hold on.
second
Let me get my
paragraph,
pen. Hold on. I'm getting my pen. Go ahead.
Here's how every man can have as many erections as he wants. And the second paragraph, here's how every woman can have as many orgasms as they want.
Mhm.
And I sent it to you too. And I said, no matter what you do, this is confidential. Do not share it with anyone. How long would it take until everybody on the planet who spoke English had a copy of that email?
Right.
Okay,
Mhm.
so when people want to know, it goes.
That's
It
why all
goes.
the other alternative hosts are selling dick pills, because people are used to
Right.
they want to have dick pills. They don't want to get healthy. They want to have
The reason people don't know about what we're talking about here is they don't want to know.
No,
And the reason
I
they
agree
don't want to
with you.
know is they want to get along. We're herd animals, and they're like, I'm busy. I got kids to raise. I got things to do. Tell me the formula for getting along with City Hall, because I don't want to fight with City Hall. And for the last 50 years, the guys who played ball with the Piggies and the Scorpions did better than the guys who didn't.
Right.
So they're like, I don't want to be a Titanic Turner. I just want to get along. And the reality is, we're kind of out of runway to play that game. The kick the can is kind of over. And you're seeing more and more people. I think that's why Trump did so well. You've got I call it the productivity backlash. And now they're starting to say, okay, I want to know, but I want to know, if City Hall's fighting with itself, what can I do to survive this circumstance, and how bring this down to me in practical ways? But I don't want to get a war with these people because they're dangerous. I mean, if you look at the people who've run the black budget, they kill with impunity, and they have killed a lot of people.
Mhm.
I mean, they have poisoned, they have given heart attacks, they have, and the American people are not stupid. They don't talk about it, but if you look at how many people in any county in this country have been assassinated by invisible or illicit means, the whole herd knows. They know how dangerous these guys are. And they're scared for good reason.
On Monday, I drove, someone else who's on disability, but I drove her over to Rochester, so there's an hour drive, and her 1 hour appointment turned into over a 2 hour appointment, and so, I was making about minimum wage when it comes all down to it. But I had time at least to sit in the cab, and I had put the MP3 of you and Edwin Vieira on there, and so I listened to that without any distractions. But it was a perfectly blue sky, except all of the lines in the sky, all of the planes flying back and forth, and there was a bunch of them that day. And I'm just kind of,
Right.
I felt like I was just living in some sort of surreal, Twilight Zone. It was just incredible.
Right. Right. And the geoengineering is one of the strangest things going on. There's no doubt about it. And if you look at what's in it, to me, it's arguably the largest or the greatest reason for the deterioration in immune systems. When I do a lot of traveling by car, and what you see in people and the plants, that you see it in the trees and the plants, there is an enormous increase in general levels of toxicity. And I think it comes from the spraying.
I see a lot of dead birds and squirrels now, and I just wonder,
Right.
But yeah,
Oh, there's an upbeat way to kind of wrap this whole thing. No, my God. No, but it's true. I mean, the world is changing around us, and much of it is probably connected to a lot of these, what we were just talking about, these black
here's
budget
the
type
thing.
of operations.
We are financing. If you look at all the things that are harming us and our families, we're financing it. And if we want to change it, we have to grapple with, how do we cut off their money and how do we bring transparency to their money because
So
they're
this is
financing it illegally.
So this is like a starve the monkey kind of thing, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So we're going.
That is going to be the title of your next book, Starve the Monkey.
No, the next one's called The Peanut Butter Pipeline, which is actually talking about. It's actually talking about. It's going to continue to talk about economy and money because it happens in Argentina. And so I'm going to talk about the financial collapse of Argentina and what people can kind of learn about and here in America. But also it's talking about drugs, how the CIA and different organizations were moving drugs and making money illegally. So it's called the Peanut Butter Pipeline. But no, but it's true. I think people have to, well, I'm not going to tell people what to do. But what I've done, I've kind of gone off the beaten path. Put it this way, if the IRS is listening, everything I'm going to say fell off of a boat. I've been, I have some silver, I have some gold, I even have a little bit of Bitcoin going on, and I just with what money comes in, I use it to just pay the bills, and I'm living within that little envelope. On paper, I'm poor. And I've kind of got my head around that. And I don't know if I keep doing that, but that's what the safest way that I found to do.
Well, here's the thing. You need to learn to do as much for yourself as possible. Mm-hmm. So if you look at all the things we spend money on, the more you can learn to do for yourself and the lower your overhead the lower you can get your own overhead, the better off you are. And you want to stay absolutely out of debt. No matter what you have to do to stay out of debt, you want to do it.
That's right.
So, and if you can save, even if it's a nickel every week, you want to save. You want to create that intention and that discipline. So
it's very strange, Catherine. I was somebody who I bought a house during the Volcker administration, during those high interest rates, and I actually tore down a house board by board to redo my house. And so I've learned all these things, plumbing, all these skills. But all of a sudden, you become a target. You don't want to fight City Hall, but City Hall wants to fight you because the contractors are mad at you. Yeah. I want to get back to one other thing. I remember hearing Donald say a long time ago, if you owe the bank $50,000, you have a problem. If you owe the bank $1 million, the bank has a problem. Well, now Donald is sitting at the helm during this great big, the hugest deficit ever, and all of a sudden he's going to have this allocate resources possibly handed to him. Do you think he'd be eliminated if he tried to exercise that power? Do you think he'll play along, or
So here's my expectation. He represents a faction of the deep state, and I don't think he's going to get out of alignment with the faction he represents. And so it's a question of what that faction wants to do and thinks is feasible. Now, I think the problem you've got, if you look at who's been attacking him, his biggest problem is not the Soros, Obama, Clinton line. I mean, they're a problem, but they're not his biggest problem. His problem is the Dick Cheney, George Shultz, grumpy old men line on the Republican side. Mm-hmm. And his problem is they decide they'd rather have Mike Pence than him. That's his problem. And it's if you think it's his problem, poor Mike Pence, because I think Pence has worked hard to make this a really good administration and transition, and is trying to be a very good soldier. So he's probably getting squeezed, by the scorpions on the Republican side. Yeah. So that's the question: is what's that deep state struggle? Because he can only go ahead of he's got a group of people who are backing him, and they need to decide as a group what to do and how to do it.
All right. Well, we've got 1 minute left, right, Rob? Am I right?
That's right. And so we have to plug Solari.
So I want everybody to know how they can get in touch with Catherine through the Solari report. Catherine, please tell people how they can get to the publications that you're doing. All these videos you've been putting out, they're so informative. Give them the
Right, so-
rundown. Go ahead.
So the Solari report, I published the Solari report. It's at solari.com, SOLARI.com. And we have a subscription service, but we have, if you want to get to know us, we have a tremendous amount for free. Our latest is a special report, wonderful interview that you related to, or you described with Edwin Vieira, top constitutional attorney and scholar in the country, and on why a constitutional convention is an absolutely terrifying, horrible idea. And that's available publicly for free. And then we have an incredible interview. Tomorrow night, we're publishing a discussion with Richard Dillon and me on all the, what I call the clash of civilization in Washington, on the budget issues and the conflicts within the deep state and the military industrial complex. So, and that's coming out tomorrow night. But there's a ton of resources. We have a deep archive. It goes back to 2008, where we're trying to explain, what in the world is really going on.